The gleaming marble floors of Luminescence, the most exclusive boutique in Beverly Hills, reflected the chandelier light in brilliant patterns across the walls. It was the kind of place where shopping bags were made of soft leather instead of paper, where salespeople spoke in hushed tones, and where the absence of visible price tags was an unspoken rule. If you had to ask, you couldn't afford it. On this particular Wednesday afternoon in late autumn, the store was relatively quiet. A handful of well-heeled customers browsed the latest collection of designer handbags, their fingers trailing over supple materials worth more than what most Americans earned in a month. The soft classical music playing overhead was interrupted only by the occasional delicate clink of jewelry being tried on, or the respectful murmurs of staff attending to their clients. Near the entrance, Vernon Miller stood out like a weathered oak among polished mahogany. At 78, his face was a canvas of wrinkles carved by 6 decades of working the land under the unforgiving California sun. His large, calloused hands, evidence of a lifetime of honest labor, hung awkwardly at his sides. His attire was practical rather than fashionable. Faded blue jeans that had been washed countless times but were impeccably clean, a plaid button-up shirt tucked in neatly, and well-worn but polished work boots. A simple brown leather belt with a modest brass buckle completed his ensemble. Vernon wasn't there to shop for himself. For the first time in 49 years of marriage, he had decided to surprise his wife, Eleanor, with something truly extravagant for their upcoming golden anniversary. Their almond farm had finally had a profitable year after several seasons of drought, and though it went against every frugal instinct he'd developed through decades of careful saving, he wanted to give Eleanor something that made her feel as precious as she truly was to him. The elderly farmer took a deep breath and stepped further into the store, his boots making a heavier sound than the designer footwear typically heard on these floors. A few heads turned briefly in his direction, but Vernon kept his eyes focused ahead, his weathered hand gripping the pocket where he'd placed the cash he'd withdrawn, specially for this occasion. "May I help you?" asked a tall, slender salesman named Xavier, his voice containing just enough polite inquiry to mask the obvious assessment he was making. His immaculately tailored charcoal suit probably cost more than Vernon's pickup truck. "Yes, sir," Vernon replied with the quiet dignity that had carried him through life's hardships. "I'm looking for something special for my wife. Our 50th anniversary is coming up next month." Xavier's smile remained fixed, but his eyes cooled slightly. "I see. And what sort of item were you considering?" "Well, she's always loved nice scarves. Wears one to church every Sunday. I thought maybe something silk with some pretty colors. Blues and purples are her favorite." As Vernon spoke, another customer had entered the store unnoticed. Unlike Vernon, this man's casual appearance, faded jeans, a simple black t-shirt under a well-worn blazer, and a beanie pulled low, didn't draw immediate attention despite his tall frame. He moved with a quiet confidence that suggested he was comfortable anywhere he went. Most importantly, his beard and slightly longer hair helped him maintain the anonymity he preferred when not on a film set or at an official appearance. Keanu Reeves had stepped into Luminescence not because he particularly enjoyed luxury shopping, but because he was looking for a gift for a crew member who had shown exceptional kindness during his latest production. He paused near the entrance, observing the interaction between the elderly farmer and the salesman with quiet interest. Xavier was leading Vernon toward a display of accessories, his body language subtly communicating that he was doing the farmer a favor merely by assisting him. "Our scarves begin at $900, he stated, gesturing to a glass case where numerous silk creations lay artfully arranged. Vernon nodded solemnly. "I understand. I've been saving up. May I see that blue one there? The one with the flowers?" With a barely concealed sigh, Xavier retrieved a stunning sapphire blue silk scarf embellished with delicate hand-painted wisteria blossoms. Even under the store's carefully calibrated lighting, the craftsmanship was evident in every thread. "This is from our Celestial Garden collection," Xavier explained in a practiced tone. "The artist creates only 12 pieces in each design annually." Vernon's weathered hands hovered over the scarf without touching it, his expression softening as he imagined it draped around Eleanor's shoulders. It's beautiful. Eleanor loves wisteria. We could never get it to grow properly on our farm. Soil's not right for it, but she always stops to admire the Peterson place when it blooms along their fence. Xavier's expression remained professionally detached, showing no interest in Vernon's personal story. "The price is $1,800, he stated flatly. Vernon exhaled slowly. It was more than he had anticipated, but he had come prepared to spend what was necessary. After all, what was money compared to the half-century Eleanor had stood by his side? "I'll take it," he said with quiet certainty. For the first time, Xavier's expression registered genuine surprise. He hadn't expected the farmer to actually purchase anything. "Very well," he replied, his tone shifting slightly. "Will that be credit card or financing?" "Cash," Vernon replied simply, reaching into his pocket to retrieve an envelope containing carefully counted bills. It was at this moment that the atmosphere in the store shifted. Angelique Harlow, the boutique's most prestigious and demanding client, swept into luminescence like a perfectly coiffed hurricane. Her reputation for extravagant purchases was matched only by her notorious temper when she felt her status wasn't being properly acknowledged. "Xavier," she called sharply, her voice cutting through the store's hushed ambiance. Her Louboutin heels clicked aggressively across the marble floor as she approached, designer sunglasses perched on her impeccably highlighted hair. "I need to see the new Catalina collection immediately. I have an event tonight and nothing suitable to wear." Xavier's posture immediately stiffened to attention. "Miss Harlow, of course. I'll be with you momentarily." Vernon, recognizing the salesman's dilemma, nodded understandingly. "Go ahead, son. I can wait." But Angelique had already assessed the situation and had made an instant judgment about the elderly farmer in his worn jeans and work boots. "I don't have momentarily," she snapped. "I have a fundraiser at the governor's mansion in 3 hours. Xavier hesitated, visibly torn between the sale he was completing and the wealthy regular whose ongoing patronage kept his commission checks substantial. "It's all right," Vernon repeated kindly. "I'm in no hurry." From his position near a display of watches, Keanu Reeves observed the scenario unfolding with growing interest. Unlike the other patrons who were pretending not to notice the brewing tension, his gaze was direct and attentive. Angelique, now noticing Vernon more fully, made no attempt to mask her disdain. "Are you actually selling him something?" she asked Xavier incredulously, as though Vernon couldn't hear her perfectly well. "I wasn't aware Luminescence had started carrying items from the farm's supply catalog." A few gasps and uncomfortable chuckles rippled through the store. Vernon's face flushed, but he maintained his dignified silence, decades of weathering both literal and figurative storms having taught him when to speak and when to stand firm in quiet resilience. Xavier cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Miss Harlow, I'll be happy to assist you right away. Let me just complete this transaction." "No," Angelique interrupted sharply. "I've been coming here for 15 years. My purchases last year alone could probably buy his entire farm or whatever. I take priority." Vernon, uncomfortable with being the center of conflict, began to step back. "Please, go ahead with the lady. I can wait or come back another time." "You can come back never," Angelique muttered, loud enough to be heard. It was then that another sales associate, a younger woman named May, who had been watching the situation with increasing discomfort, stepped forward. "Miss Harlow, I'd be happy to show you the Catalina collection while Xavier finishes with this gentleman." Angelique's perfectly made-up face hardened. "No offense, but I work exclusively with Xavier. He knows my preferences." She turned to Vernon, her patience clearly exhausted. "Look, I don't think you understand how this works. This isn't the feed store. This is Luminescence. People like me keep places like this in business, not people like—" Her gaze flicked dismissively over his attire. "You." Vernon's voice remained steady despite the public humiliation. "I understand, ma'am. I'm just trying to buy a gift for my wife." "Your wife," Angelique repeated with a scoff. "What's next? Coming in to buy your tractor a diamond collar?" Keanu had seen enough. He moved forward quietly, without drawing attention to himself yet, but positioning himself within the conversation's orbit. Vernon, refusing to be baited into rudeness, simply reached for his envelope of cash again. "Xavier, maybe we could just complete the purchase quickly, and then you can help the lady properly." "Absolutely," Xavier agreed, relieved at the potential resolution. He began carefully folding the blue scarf into tissue paper. Angelique, however, was not accustomed to being ignored. "Oh, for heaven's sake," she snapped, reaching for the scarf. "I'll take this too, along with whatever else I select. Problem solved." Vernon's weathered hand gently but firmly held onto his end of the scarf. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but this is for Eleanor, for 50 years of marriage." 50 years? Angelique's perfectly arched eyebrows rose in mock impression. "How quaint. I've had handbags that cost more than your house that I've thrown away after a season." The store had grown uncomfortably silent, the other customers and staff watching the confrontation with a mixture of embarrassment and morbid fascination. "Let go of the scarf," Angelique demanded, giving it a sharp tug. "Please, ma'am," Vernon said, his voice still respectful but firm. "I came here special to get this for Eleanor." What happened next occurred so quickly that many in the store would later recall it differently. Angelique, unused to not getting her way immediately, yanked the scarf with one hand while the other swung upward, connecting with Vernon's weathered cheek in a sharp slap that echoed through the silent store. The elderly farmer, caught entirely off guard, staggered slightly. The envelope of cash slipped from his fingers, bills scattering across the polished marble floor. His hand rose slowly to his cheek, more in shock than pain, his eyes reflecting not anger but a profound sadness. "Know your place," Angelique hissed, triumph in her eyes as she clutched the now crumpled scarf. The collective intake of breath from witnesses seemed to freeze time itself. Xavier stood paralyzed, his professional training having prepared him for demanding customers but not for physical assault in his department. May had her hand over her mouth, eyes wide with horror. In this suspended moment of shocked silence, a calm, measured voice cut through the tension like a blade through silk. "I think you dropped something," Keanu Reeves said, bending down to gather the scattered bills from the floor. His movements were unhurried, deliberate, as he collected every last dollar that had fallen from Vernon's envelope. The recognition was instant. Whispers of "Is that?" and "It's him!" rippled through the store as Keanu stood to his full height, handing the neatly gathered cash back to Vernon with a respectful nod. "Thank you, young man," Vernon said, clearly not recognizing the actor, but grateful for the simple kindness. Keanu turned to Angelique, whose expression had transformed from triumph to uncertainty. "That scarf doesn't belong to you," he stated simply, his voice quiet but carrying an unmistakable weight. "I was going to pay for it," Angelique stammered, recognition dawning in her eyes. "That's not the point," Keanu replied. His tone remained even, without a hint of the anger that would have been justified. "This gentleman made his selection first. More importantly, no purchase gives anyone the right to treat another person with disrespect, let alone physical aggression." Angelique's composure began to crack under the combined pressure of Keanu's gentle but firm rebuke and the realization that her behavior had been witnessed by someone whose opinion actually mattered to her. "Do you know who I am?" she demanded, attempting to regain control of the situation. Keanu's response was simple. "I know you're someone who just slapped an elderly man in public because you felt entitled to something he had chosen first." The brutal simplicity of this truth, spoken without malice but with absolute clarity, seemed to deflate Angelique's remaining bravado. She glanced around, suddenly aware of the numerous witnesses to her behavior, many of whom were now recording discreetly with their phones. Xavier, finally finding his professional voice, stepped forward. "Miss Harlow, I'm going to have to ask you to leave the premises immediately." "What?" Angelique's shock was genuine. "You can't be serious. I've spent hundreds of thousands here." "And that will never justify what just happened," Xavier replied, his previous deference evaporated. "Security will escort you out, or we can call the police regarding the assault that just occurred." As if on cue, the store's security guard approached, and his expression professionally neutral, but his message clear. Angelique looked from Xavier to Keanu to Vernon, searching for any sign of yielding. Finding none, she thrust the crumpled scarf at Xavier and stormed toward the exit, her dignity in tatters. "You'll be hearing from my lawyer," she threatened weakly as she departed. In the wake of her exit, an awkward silence fell over the store. Vernon stood rubbing his cheek, the envelope of cash clutched tightly in his other hand, looking somewhat lost amid the luxury surroundings that suddenly seemed less intimidating and more superficial. Keanu turned to him with genuine concern. "Are you all right, sir?" Vernon nodded slowly. "Been through worse. Once had a tractor roll back on my leg during a repair. This is nothing." Despite his words, the emotional impact of the public humiliation was evident in his eyes. Xavier, now visibly chagrined by his earlier behavior, carefully retrieved a fresh scarf from the display, identical to the one Angelique had crumpled. "Mr. Miller, please accept my sincerest apologies for what just happened. This scarf is yours, with Luminescence's compliments." Vernon shook his head firmly. "No, thank you. I came to pay for a gift for my wife, not to accept charity." He held out the envelope. $1,800, as we agreed. Keanu watched this exchange with quiet approval, recognizing in Vernon's response the same dignity that had characterized his reaction to Angelique's abuse. Xavier hesitated, then nodded respectfully. "Of course, Mr. Miller." He proceeded to ring up the purchase with a deference that had been absent in his earlier interaction. As Vernon completed his transaction, Keanu browsed nearby, deliberately giving the man space while ensuring the situation resolved properly. When Vernon turned to leave with his carefully wrapped package, Keanu approached him once more. 50 years of marriage is quite an achievement," he commented. Vernon's face softened. "Best years of my life, every single one of them. Even the hard ones, maybe especially those." "Would you mind sharing your secret?" Keanu asked, his interest genuine. "For a successful marriage, I mean." Vernon considered the question with the seriousness it deserved. "No real secret to it. You choose each other every day, through the droughts and the good harvests alike. The days Eleanor and I had nothing but beans for dinner, and the days we could afford a proper roast, we chose each other through all of it." He patted the package containing the scarf. "That's what this is really about. Not the silk or the fancy store. It's about still choosing her every morning when I wake up, same as I did 50 years ago." Keanu nodded thoughtfully. "That's beautiful and rare." "Not as rare as folks might think," Vernon replied. "Just requires seeing what matters beneath all the—" He gestured vaguely at the luxury surroundings, "the stuff that doesn't." "Vernon Miller," a voice interrupted. It was May, holding a business card. "The store manager would like to extend an invitation for you and Eleanor to attend our private holiday showcase next month. We'll be featuring items that we think might be more to Eleanor's tastes than our regular collection." Vernon accepted the card with a small smile. "That's mighty kind. I'll ask Eleanor if she'd like to come. She enjoys pretty things more than I do." As Vernon prepared to leave, Keanu extended his hand. "It was an honor to meet you, Mr. Miller." Vernon shook it firmly. "Likewise, young man. Thanks for your help with the money. These old fingers aren't what they used to be." It was clear that Vernon still didn't recognize Keanu, which seemed to please the actor. "Take care of yourself, and congratulations on your anniversary." After Vernon had departed, several customers approached Keanu for photos and autographs, which he graciously accommodated with his characteristic humility. Xavier, seizing the opportunity, offered to assist the actor with whatever he had come in to purchase. "Actually," Keanu said, "I'd like to see your collection of wallets. Something practical but well-made." "Of course, Mr. Reeves. Our finest leather collection is right this way." As they walked toward another section of the store, Keanu glanced back at the entrance where Vernon had disappeared. "You know," he said thoughtfully, "I've been thinking about what makes a purchase valuable." Xavier, eager to redeem himself, nodded attentively. "It's not the price tag or the brand," Keanu continued. "It's the intention behind it. That gentleman just taught everyone in this store something important about value." Xavier had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. "Yes, I believe he did." Later that evening, as Vernon Miller drove his truck back to the almond farm that had been in his family for 3 generations, he was unaware that his encounter had already gone viral on social media. Clips of Angelique's behavior and Keanu's intervention were being shared with millions of viewers, most of whom were expressing outrage at the treatment of the elderly farmer and admiration for the actor's understated intervention. Vernon was thinking only of Eleanor and how her eyes would light up when she opened her gift next month. He was thinking about the wisteria pattern on the silk and how it would bring out the remarkable blue of her eyes, eyes that had seen him at his best and his worst, and had never wavered in their love. As the truck kicked up dust on the familiar road leading to the farmhouse, Vernon reflected that the most valuable thing he'd ever purchased wasn't sitting in the elegant shopping bag beside him. It was the simple gold band he'd saved for months to buy 50 years ago, when he had nothing but his name and his promise to offer Eleanor. Everything else was just details. Meanwhile, in his modest home that belied his celebrity status, Keanu Reeves sat reading a book, unaware of his trending status on social media. His encounter with Vernon had reminded him of his own mother's teachings about treating everyone with dignity, regardless of their appearance or status. Lessons that had helped him maintain his groundedness, despite decades in an industry known for warping perspectives. On his coffee table sat a simple brown leather wallet, the purchase he'd made at Luminescence. It was a gift for Jim, a grip on his latest film, who had recently lost his father and had shared stories about the worn wallet his dad had carried for 40 years. Keanu had listened, really listened, to those stories during late nights on set. The wallet wasn't expensive by Keanu's standards, but like Vernon's scarf, its value lay in the intention behind it. In a world increasingly defined by brand names and price tags, both men understood what truly mattered. And that, perhaps, was the real luxury. 3 weeks later, Eleanor Miller unwrapped her anniversary gift with trembling hands. Her gasp of delight as she held the silk scarf against her cheek made every penny of its cost worthwhile to Vernon. "It's the most beautiful thing I've ever owned," she whispered, eyes shining with tears. Vernon smiled, taking her hand in his. "Not as beautiful as the woman wearing it." Eleanor blushed like the young woman she'd been when they'd first met. "Vernon Miller, still sweet-talking me after all these years." "Just telling the truth, same as I always have," he replied. Neither of them mentioned the fading bruise on his cheek, the result of Angelique's slap. Vernon had explained it away as a minor accident with a low-hanging branch. He saw no reason to tarnish their celebration with the story of that unpleasantness. What Vernon didn't know was that a large envelope had arrived that morning while he was tending to the irrigation system. Eleanor had opened it to find an invitation to a special Hollywood charity gala benefiting agricultural communities affected by climate change. The invitation was personally signed by Keanu Reeves, who had tracked down their address through the store's records. Eleanor had set it aside, planning to show it to Vernon after their anniversary dinner. She didn't understand exactly why they'd received such an invitation, but she was looking forward to hearing Vernon's explanation. Some stories, it seemed, were destined to continue beyond their apparent conclusion, and some encounters, brief as they might be, carried ripples that extended far beyond the moment they occurred. In a world that often measured worth by possessions and status, two men from vastly different circumstances had recognized something fundamental in each other, the quiet integrity that transcends all external trappings of success. And that recognition, like Vernon and Eleanor's enduring love, was something no luxury boutique could ever put a price on. 6 months later, a framed photograph appeared on the wall of the Millers' modest farmhouse living room. It showed Vernon and Eleanor standing between Keanu Reeves and several prominent environmental activists at the charity gala. Eleanor wore her blue wisteria scarf. Next to this photograph hung another, a black and white image from 50 years earlier, showing a young Vernon and Eleanor on their wedding day, their futures unknown, but their commitment absolute. The two images, separated by half a century but connected by unwavering devotion, told a story more valuable than anything that could ever be purchased in a luxury boutique, even one where Keanu Reeves might be watching.